Another Saturday night of racing at the Upper Peninsula International Raceway was led off by the Riverside Auto Group with microsprints. Carl Warm and Catherine Town led the field to green, but Ethan Manninen was the action man right away, splitting Town and Tanner Hansen and moving into second. Liam Steinhauer, who surprisingly returned to action after tumbling in the heat, would follow Manninen on the inside and into third. Up front, it was all Carl Warm in this one as he distanced himself from second place Ethan Manninen. After the woes of last week, Carl Warm took the feature win to get some redemption. Manninen followed in second, and Brian Hakala crossed the line in an impressive third in his first UPIR appearance of 2020. The Sportsman microsprints were in action next, and the opening lap almost spelled disaster for Luke Lobb and Trevor Denome as the two came into contact and somehow didn't end up in the wall or upside down. Both drivers kept control of either airborne or sideways cars somehow. On the restart, Brennan Swanson established himself as the driver to beat, taking control of the front of the pack. As things began to calm down somewhat, Trevor Denome would stumble to a stop in turns 1 and 2, bringing out a late race caution. The racing after the restart featured battles throughout the field between Dave Hosking, Luke Lobb, and Brett Lobb, with Hosking moving up and into the third spot. Brett would make his way around Luke and into fourth. Further ahead, it was all Brennan Swanson, though, as he would take the feature win to sweep the night's Sportsman action. Drake Dagnan and Dave Hosking followed in second and third. The Getchell Builders 600 microsprint division was in action next, with Paul Hosking getting the jump on the field into turn 1. The recently snake-bitten drivers of Kevin Warm and Matt Peterson soon began to make their way to the front end of the pack just laps into the race, moving into second and third respectively as the pack snarled behind them. Warm would close in on Hosking for the lead, and as they made their way through lap traffic, Warm would take the spot, as seen here through turns 3 and 4. No sooner, though, would Hosking come roaring back on the inside in turn 3 of a 3-wide sandwich that put Dennis Ness between the top two. Hosking would use the opportunity to not only pass, but pull away from Kevin Warm. But as the white flag flew, Kevin Warm jumped to the outside after clawing his way back to Hosking. Through turn 1, the move stuck, and Warm would come home the victor after back-to-back weeks of surefire wins yanked from his grasp. Paul Hosking and Matt Peterson rounded out the top 3. The UP Vintage Modified field poured onto the track for their feature next, with Don Benoit and Vern Van Dries on the front row. A hungry bunch of drivers would soon swallow the two up as Alan Yell would take control up front. Charles Peterson slotted into second, while Scott Dagnan and Herbie Iverson battled for third. Yell, as the leader, was the first driver to encounter lap traffic. He would use it to his advantage, though, to gap the drivers behind him and buy himself a little more time up front. The threat behind Yell, however, would change from Charles Peterson to the orange and blue 75 of Scott Dagnan. Dagnan would go to the inside of Yell just a few laps later, and soon would take over as the leader up front. As Dagnan pulled away, the drivers to watch became Alan Yell, Dan Lambert, and Jesse Denome. First, Yell and Lambert battled for the second position. Then, as the white flag began to fly, Jesse Denome was the driver on the charge. While Dagnan took the win, Yell held on to second, while Dan Lambert shut down Jesse Denome's attempt to reach the podium. A wild A&L Iron and Metal Street Stock feature lay just ahead as Nick Wiesner took off from the front and into the lead. Behind him, simply put, was a mess of race cars as the pack battled 2 and 3 wide, jockeying for position. Billy Bowden was the first driver to emerge from the pack. He then went on to take over up front, passing Wiesner on the back straightaway. The caution flew soon after for Eric Mathieson, spinning in turn 4. Unfortunately for Eric, his night would not get any better. Following the restart, Tyler Corwin and Ben Buckland came together, sending Buckland spinning and leaving Chris Olson with nowhere to go. Tyler Corwin would spin on his own soon after the restart. leading to another caution. Just when a rhythm seemed to have established itself, things really went off the rails. As Ron Genshak and Paul Wagner butted heads in turns 3 and 4, with Genshak taking a ride through the infield, Eric Mathieson spun in turn 1, flipping over and collecting Ben Buckland, all of this happening off camera. Thankfully, both drivers were okay after the scary scene in turn number 1. Things between Genshak and Wagner hit the breaking point on the last lap as the two came together again, sending Genshak spinning in turn 3. Billy Bowden would take the win with Wagner coming home in second. Nick Gleasner would cross the line in a strong third-place finish. The Binks Coca-Cola Sport Modified feature failed to take off next, as officials did not like the first attempt at starting the race. Attempt number 2, however, would go much better, with cars going every which way on the opening lap and several swapping paint as Harvey Lewis dropped from the front row through the field. Jeff Solomon, however, would take the lead up front early on in the going, but soon would have company in the form of Matt Valaket. Valaket would jump to the outside and storm around Solomon through turns 1 and 2. Russ Franks would do the same and move himself up to second. Then it was Jamie Iverson's turn to battle Jeff Solomon. He too would go to the outside through turns 1 and 2, but wouldn't be able to get to the job done on the first try. Again, he would try the outside and make it work as Lonnie Dalgord then took over the battle with Solomon. Wally Sepinen would have some steering issues, bringing out the cautions in turn number 3. On the restart, Matt Valaket led the field back to green, with Russ Franks and Jamie Iverson in lockstep. The field would slow again, though, as Matt Mackey looped his car in turn 3. Doug Belangi would go around as well, spinning in avoidance. Matt Mackey would find trouble once again moments later, and he would call it a night after the second incident. Valaket went back to his leading ways late in the going as Jamie Iverson tried to close in as laps ticked away. Iverson would give it his all on the last lap. Down the back straightaway into turn 3 for the final time, Iverson was coming up just short as Matt Valaket would take the win. Russ Franks would finish in third, while Iverson took second. Rounding out the night were the Sport Compacts, and this week Alex Constantino would have his hands full with Trevor Cronick, who was making his first UPIR appearance of the year. For what seemed like the whole race, Cronick and Constantino were side by side. The night for the Mathieson family, however, kept going wrong as Ryan Mathieson lost his right rear tire. It didn't end there for the Mathiesons either. As expected, Constantino and Cronick resumed their battle with a little bit of bumper tag being played for the race win. They were in each other's tire tracks if they weren't side by side, and what was an absolutely incredible battle for the Sport Compact feature win. Kyle Mathieson was the last of the Mathiesons to find trouble as his car would stop out of turn 4. In the mad dash to the finish, Alex Constantino would be able to withstand the barrage from Trevor Cronick behind him. Third place went to Nathan Bryce. UPIR races again Saturday night, July 19th, with a green flag time of 7 p.m. Eastern.